Welcome to the AI History Channel. In today's episode, we tell you the story of the balloon bombs that reached America. On a bright spring morning in 1945, a young woman and 5 children drove into the forest of southern Oregon for a picnic. They found a strange pale object caught in the trees. As they gathered around it, it exploded and all 6 were killed. They were the only people killed by an enemy attack on the American mainland in the entire Second World War. The weapon that killed them had crossed an entire ocean, alone, with no pilot and no engine. And it was made almost entirely of paper. This is the story of the strangest weapon of the war, and of why, in the end, it was already doomed. None of this is legend. Every part of it was real and carefully documented. By 1944, Japan could no longer strike the United States directly. Its carriers were sunk and its bombers could not come close. And yet it wanted, desperately, to carry the war to the American homeland, to make the enemy feel the fear that Japan itself now felt. So its army turned to an idea that sounded absurd. A weapon that would need no pilot and no fuel and would float to America on the wind itself. The balloon was 10 meters across. Its envelope was not metal or rubber, but paper. Layers of mulberry paper glued together entirely by hand. Each envelope took hundreds of paper panels, sealed with a paste made from a root vegetable. The work was fine, patient, and endless. Much of it was done by teams of schoolgirls, working long shifts in requisition theaters and sumo halls, kneeling over sheets the size of a room. Filled with hydrogen, each balloon could lift roughly its own weight again in equipment and explosives. Beneath it hung a ring of sandbags and a small aluminum device. This device was the true genius of the weapon and the reason it could survive the journey at all. At night, the gas cooled and the balloon began to sink. A barometer sensed the fall and released a single sandbag, and the balloon rose again. By day, as the sun heated the gas, a valve vented hydrogen to keep the balloon from climbing too high and bursting. Automatically, with no human hand, the machine held itself near 10 kilometers above the sea for days on end. It carried a small anti-personnel bomb and a handful of incendiary devices. Its target was not a city or a factory. Its target was the forest. Japan believed the great forests of the American Northwest could be set ablaze. Fires would spread panic, draw men from the war, and burn the enemy's own land beneath him. It was patient, elegant, and cruel. But first, it had to cross the widest ocean on Earth. Between Japan and those forests lay 8,000 kilometers of open water. The answer was a discovery few in the world yet understood. High above the Pacific ran a river of air moving faster than any storm. Today we call it the jet stream. A Japanese scientist had charted these high winter winds years before. They blew from Japan toward America at over 200 kilometers an hour. Ride that river at exactly the right height, and a balloon could cross the entire ocean in just 3 days. The launches began in November 1944 from cold, windswept sites on the Japanese coast. Over the next 5 months, Japan released more than 9,000 of them into the winter sky. Most were never seen again. They failed over the water, iced over, or drifted off course and vanished into the Pacific. But not all of them. The first was spotted floating off the California coast that same November. Then fragments began turning up inland. A balloon in Montana, paper in Wyoming, debris in the snow of the mountains. At least 300 would eventually be found from Alaska to Mexico and as far east as Michigan. A pale envelope came down near a schoolyard. Ranchers found torn paper draped across their fences. Something impossible was falling out of the American sky. Fighter pilots were sent up to hunt them. But the balloons drifted near 10 kilometers high, at the very edge of what the aircraft could reach. Only a handful were ever shot down. The rest arrived in silence, on their own schedule, wherever the wind decided. Then one drifted into the state of Washington, and its trailing wires snagged a power line, feeding a vast and secret complex called Hanford. Hanford was making the plutonium for the bomb that would one day destroy Nagasaki. The balloon caused a brief loss of power. Backup systems caught it within seconds. A paper balloon from the far side of the world had, for an instant, brushed against the American atomic program itself. And then, in the forest of Oregon, the weapon finally did the one thing its makers had prayed for. It killed. By now, the American government faced two urgent questions. Where were these coming from? And how could the country be kept calm? The answer to the first came from an unlikely place. Not from spies, but from sand. Each balloon dropped ballast sand as it flew. American geologists gathered that sand and studied it grain by grain under the microscope. The minerals and tiny fossils in the sand did not match any American beach. They matched a specific stretch of coastline on the Japanese home islands. From a handful of sand, they had found the launch sites. American bombers were sent to destroy the plants that produced the hydrogen. On the ground, America prepared for the fires. Thousands of troops were placed on alert across the western forests, ready to move at the first sign of flame. Among them was a battalion of Black American paratroopers, trained to jump directly into the burning wilderness as the nation's first military smoke jumpers. But the most powerful weapon America used was not fire or aircraft. It was silence. The government asked every newspaper and radio station in the country not to report a single balloon. And, remarkably, they agreed. The reasoning was cold and precise. If Japan never heard that its balloons were arriving, it could never correct their aim and never learn that any had worked. In Japan, the planners waited for reports of great fires and panic in the American press. They found nothing at all. To them, the weapon looked like a complete failure, short of hydrogen from the bombing, and convinced the whole effort had been wasted. Japan shut the program down in the spring of 1945. They called off the balloons only weeks before the picnic in Oregon. The weapon was already abandoned by its makers when it finally killed. Only after those deaths did the government break its silence, quietly warning the public to stay away from any strange object found in the woods. So here the documented history ends, and the harder question begins. Could this weapon ever have truly mattered? To turn a frightening nuisance into a genuine strategic threat, several things would have had to change at once. The timing. The balloons flew in winter when the American forests were soaked with rain and buried in snow and simply would not burn. A summer campaign might have found them dry and ready. The numbers. 9,000 balloons sounds vast, but only a small fraction survived the crossing. A campaign of hundreds of thousands would have been a wholly different weapon. But Japan in 1944 had little hydrogen, little paper, and no children to spare for such a number. The war was already closing over it. And 3. The change that haunts this story most. Japan considered arming the balloons not with fire, but with disease. With the plague and anthrax weapons it had already secretly built. This was not fantasy. Japan ran a secret biological weapons program, and the idea of a biological balloon attack was raised at the highest levels of its command. It was rejected. Japan's leaders feared that the biological attack on the American homeland would bring a retaliation so total that Japan itself could not survive it. Had that single decision gone the other way, a silent paper balloon drifting over a sleeping town at dawn could have carried something far worse than fire. Notice what every one of these paths demands. Not cleverness. Japan already had that in abundance. It demands resources and time that Japan no longer had, and that is the real lesson hidden inside this strange campaign. The balloon bomb was genuinely ingenious. It rode a wind that science had barely discovered, and it steered itself alone across the widest ocean on Earth. But ingenuity was never Japan's problem. The problem was that a single clever weapon cannot win a war that a nation has already lost the means to fight. 6 people died in an Oregon forest, killed by a machine of paper and wind sent from the far side of the world. And even that machine's own makers had already given up on it before it ever found them. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And tell us in the comments which topic you would like to see next.